This is CBC Vancouver News.
No, I've not abandoned the LGBTQ plus community. I'm part of it. In a big tent, there's room for everybody.
The trickle of political defections to the BC Conservatives raises questions about where this leaves the SOGI debate. Plus,
it doesn't seem fair.
Air Canada fights in order to pay a BC couple over a delayed flight. Why experts say this is only the beginning. Also,
so it might have an impact on foreign policy too.
India's election reverberates in BC. How the results could affect the tense relationship between India and Canada. Hello, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. Since it rolled out in 2016, a key provincial resource used in schools has been the focus of much criticism and protest. SOGI stands for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. And as Belpuri reports, it's once again top of mind in the wake of the latest political defection to the BC Conservatives.
Eleanor Sturko's jump to John Rustad's Conservatives has certainly raised questions. Topping the list, perhaps, what it means for the future of the heavily debated sexual orientation and gender identity resources in BC schools.
Finding an opportunity to create something new for our school system that respects legally enshrined rights and rebuilds the trust and finally puts this division to bed, I think is a wonderful thing to do.
SOGI 123 is a resource, not a curriculum. It was introduced 8 years ago by the BC Liberals, Sturko's former party, now called BC United. The current NDP government supports the resources. The BC Conservatives, not so much.
The material that's being made available to students in schools can't even be read or said in the legislature. You couldn't put it on television programs because it's pornography. This sort of stuff has to go out of our schools.
Rustad says his newest team member is in favor of changes to SOGI 123.
There's a distortion here of what we actually do in our schools.
SOGI is the guide to addressing discrimination and bullying in an inclusive environment for LGBTQ students.
In no way, shape, or form is any teacher speaking about pornography in classrooms or showing students pornography.
The use of SOGI material is not mandated, but can be incorporated into any subject.
We include information and education on people of different religious backgrounds, people of different racial and cultural backgrounds, and we need to include people with the SOGI education as well.
As a Liberal, Sturko was a very vocal member of LGBTQ issues. Just last October, on his first day in the House as BC Conservative leader, the Premier lambasted Rustad over his party's SOGI platform. Sturko led the 32-second-long standing ovation in support of David Eby's comments.
No, I've not abandoned the LGBTQ plus community. I'm part of it. I'm going to say this, that in a big tent, there's room for everybody.
Belpuri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, still with politics, former RCMP officer Baltaj Singh Dhillon is vying to be the NDP candidate for Surrey Serpentine River in the fall election. Dhillon made history in 1991 by becoming the first RCMP officer to wear a turban as part of his uniform. Today, he says he hopes to bring his lived volunteer and professional experience to the riding.
As I've said many times over, I have zero interest in becoming a politician. I have a lot of interest in continuing with my service in the community. So this is about lending my name towards the work and also putting forward ideas and initiatives that over the years I believe will make a better British Columbia.
Well, turns out it is going to cost a lot more money to redevelop Richmond Hospital than first projected. The price tag has more than doubled since the business plan was developed in 2021. The total project cost is now close to $2 billion. BC's Health Ministry blames rising construction costs. The redevelopment will add 113 more hospital beds and improved medical care spaces and equipment. ICBC has to pay thousands of dollars to roughly 200 customers whose data was leaked more than a decade ago. It was a privacy breach that led to arsons and shootings right across the Lower Mainland. And now a BC Supreme Court judge's decision concludes that a long-running class action lawsuit against a former ICB adjuster and the company over 9 months between 2011 and 2012, houses and vehicles belonging to some of the customers who had their data stolen were targeted. The judge said it's important to hold organizations accountable at a time when they collect vast amounts of personal information. A BC couple is speaking out after Air Canada took them to court. The airline is fighting an order to pay compensation for a delayed flight. As the CBC's Sophia Harris explains, experts say this is only the beginning.
Following a 24-hour flight delay to Costa Rica, Andrew and Anna Ditchkowski were thrilled when a Canadian Transportation Agency officer determined Air Canada was to blame and must pay the couple $2,000 compensation.
We were kind of happy that the system works.
Yeah.
But instead of getting their cash, Air Canada is taking the couple to court to try to overturn the officer's ruling.
We're numb. Leave us little folks alone. Like we really don't want to be in this business of courts. Something is really wrong, in the system.
Airlines have always had the right to appeal CTA decisions on air passenger complaints. However, it's been rare.
Any appeal the airlines wanted to bring up would have to allege an error of law, which is a big high standard to meet.
But now that's changed. The CTA adopted new rules late last year to streamline the complaints process. One result, airlines can now legally challenge a broader range of CTA decisions. So some experts worry carriers may try to clog the courts with cases.
It's really unfortunate. There's going to be a lot more of these, I think, to try to further gum up the process and make the complaints process look bad.
Air Canada refutes the prediction. In an email to CBC News, it said legal challenges are complex and costly and only pursued for serious matters of fact or law.
The new system is definitely working.
The CTA says the new streamlined system is cutting down its huge backlog of complaints. But if airlines launch lots of legal challenges, it will take action.
If we need to adjust, then certainly that's advice we would bring to the government.
That's little comfort for the Ditchkowskis.
It doesn't seem fair.
They did get one piece of good news. If Air Canada wins the court case, it says the couple won't be on the hook for legal fees. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
Rescue crews hope a break in the weather tomorrow will help them in their search for 3 missing mountaineers in Garibaldi Provincial Park. The experienced trio was near Mount Atwell on Friday. That night, search and rescue teams were called in. Since then, challenging conditions and high avalanche risk has prevented crews from reaching the area by air or on foot. The RCMP says weather models show a clearing trend tomorrow afternoon. They hope to do an aerial surveillance before sending ground crews in. The next time you're in White Rock, you might notice a new sign asking you to pay for the pier. This digital donation box along the promenade asks visitors to help restore White Rock Pier. It doesn't take cash, but people can tap a card instead. The city says it has repaired parts of the pier after it was torn apart in 2018 by a storm, but says it needs more money now to complete the work.
I would argue, tax dollars, parking money should go towards the parking funds.
I mean, I think they should pay for it, but I like the upkeep of natural things, so I think I would help out.
It's a fantastic idea. I don't see why people wouldn't want to contribute.
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
Would you donate?
Yes, well, I will. How much you want?
Home sales in Metro Vancouver have fallen nearly 20% in the past year as inventory continues to climb. According to Greater Vancouver Realtors, the region recorded roughly 2,700 home sales last month. That number is far lower than May of last year when almost 3,400 homes were sold. The benchmark price for all residential properties in Metro Vancouver is now just over $1.2 million. That's up almost 2.5% from last May. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has won a third 5-year term in office after a mammoth election. But as our South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji reports, his victory was not the landslide many expected.
The drums ring out and the celebratory dances pour onto the street at the headquarters for India's ruling BJP. But this isn't exactly a win for Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
He did his best.
Modi was supposed to cruise to victory this election, which was dominated by polarizing religious rhetoric. Instead, India's voters sent a clear message.
Round 4.
As early results rolled in, the shock set in, with the count showing a surprising setback for Modi, the popular strongman, and his seemingly unbeatable BJP. Their majority now severely diminished. Modi will have to work with his coalition allies to govern. He may have claimed a decisive victory, saying this is a win for the world's largest democracy. But it was the opposition Congress Party and its headquarters that was more jubilant.
This was our last hope to save the democracy, to save the Constitution.
They far outperformed expectations. After cobbling together an alliance of opposition parties to try to stop Modi from winning a rare third term.
The country has unanimously and clearly stated, we do not want Mr. Narendra Modi.
The Congress, relegated to the political wilderness for Modi's decade-long rule, now given new life.
It's an election where the people in power have to be told that, well, you're okay, you're doing well, but this is where you need a bit of course correction.
Even some who voted for Modi are pleased with the result, tempering the power of the man who's ruled India with a strong hand for 10 years.
This opposition party has performed very well. Opposition should be there to fight.
It's not yet clear how Modi will operate under the diminished mandate that voters here have given him. But with such a slim majority for his alliance, he's now a much humbled prime minister. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Delhi.
Many in BC's large Indian community have been keeping a close eye on those results, some wondering if and how a coalition government will impact strained relations between Canada and India. Michelle Gassoub has reaction.
The votes are still being counted, but news that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi faced a stronger challenge from the opposition than expected is already sending ripples through India's diaspora community here.
So I think it's some evidence that there is enough of a pushback to ensure that they didn't get the supermajority they were expecting.
The religious discord that has happened between minorities and the majority Hindu religion is not the major focus. The major focus is probably poverty, getting rid of poverty, education, environment.
Many in BC's Sikh community have ties to Punjab, an area that largely voted for the opposition that challenged Modi. Without the supermajority his Hindu Nationalist Party was hoping for, he'll need to rely on coalition partners to govern.
And from there, you can see that it's going to shift a little bit.
This expert says that could temper some of the more polarizing rhetoric that has come to define India's political landscape in recent years.
It is sometimes better to have a coalition government because it constrains the government from more extremist views and policies. So it might have an impact on foreign policy too.
That includes India's relationship with Canada, which deteriorated following the murder of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar here in BC, a killing that Canada's government says India had a hand in. While Indian citizens living abroad weren't eligible to vote in this behemoth of an election, they were heavily courted by Indian political parties.
I think more research needs to be done on the role of the diaspora and its effects on domestic politics and foreign policy here.
India's election was the world's largest democratic exercise, with some 640 million votes cast over 6 weeks. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
As we brace for wildfire season across BC, crews are deep into their preparations. Some attack the flames from the sky. In the north, the Smoke Jumper Operations Base in Fort St. John walked us through their parachute checks. Take a look.
This location is the Northeast Smoke Jumper Base and also the Fort St. John Fire Zone. This is our parachute packing loft where all the rigging tables are. What's happening right now here is all those parachutes you see on those tables, those are main canopies that the jumpers are going out under. There's the fire gong. When that goes off, people will suit up. We talked about that earlier. But yeah, after the parachutes are deployed, they're required to be hung and shaken. We inspect them, do any sort of repairs or maintenance to them that's required before they go on the tables and are packed for operational purposes. This area here, this is our sewing room and manufacturing. Almost all of our equipment and all of our jump gear is manufactured and assembled here in Fort St. John by Wildfire service staff, smoke jumpers specifically. We can't send our parachutes out for repair when they get a hole in them, stuff like that. So they get broken down, fully repaired, and put back into service here. So when we think of like the actual jump gear that we're talking about manufacturing, everything that you see here is something that we actually fabricate and build here on site or in service. So these jumpsuits are made out of ballistic Kevlar. It prevents the risk of spearing, so as jumpers may travel or enter like the forest, there's obviously a lot of sticks or branches that they could be impacted by. The spear resistance associated with the material reduces the risk to the jumper. So that's why we use that material, as well as it's also fire resistant up to like 600 degrees. And that closed cell foam acts as a life preserver if the jumper was to end up in a river. And these large collars that you see here, they're designed to go around the helmet to reach around it. This prevents any sort of like branches or something possibly to get up and under the helmet, you know, where you risk of once again spearing or puncturing. The different risers, the colors that we see on them, is a large parachute and medium parachute, and the blue on the bottom is small. And it's basically associated with the jumper size and weight in order that they have a more consistent descent rate to the ground. So when the fire gong goes off, when they have a fire call, they come here, they rapidly suit up, and then they go and load in the aircraft, which is up here. So right now they do have a number of air tanker missions happening for a number of like local fires that are going. And so yeah, you can see them rolling from the air tanker base here. So this is the aircraft. This is one of our smoke jumper aircraft that we utilize. It currently doesn't have any equipment loaded on it. You can come on inside. Generally across this side of the aircraft, it's normally loaded with fire gear. We can see it in one of our like forklift pallets over there. It's fully loaded with gear, and then the jumpers are loaded in the seats that are adjacent to it. The gear's just not on the aircraft right now because we're in the process of doing recurrency jumps and seasonal certifications for new recruits. So it's kind of playing two roles, one for fire response, as well as we're trying to get staff trained and ready to go for the fire season. So the fire hose that the crews are using, when it's in a melon roll, that's come off a fire. They've utilized it for fire operations. They stretch it all out, they dry it. If it's clean enough, they re-roll it. And you can see the roller there. They re-roll it, and then they put it in there, and then they repack it in bags so that it can refunction for the next fire it goes to.
Coming up, BC's recent minimum wage bump is welcome news for workers, but what does it mean for businesses? That's next. Welcome back. The minimum wage in BC has gone up by 65 cents, now at $17.40 an hour. So what difference will it make? We asked employers and employees around Vancouver.
Reaction to the minimum wage going up is how difficult it is already, for the restaurant business to survive. And it's basically based on the fact that it's not just minimum wage gone up, it's inflation, it's been the, cost of borrowing and all that. So it's a bit of a shock to the system.
It is really tough to live in Vancouver as a city if you're depending on this, and most people have 2 jobs, so I'm grateful that I can live at home, but it is a struggle always.
The cost of production on goods goes up, the shipping, rent every year is going up and stuff, so the margins keep getting lower and lower and lower. So, this is just another thing that takes a little bite out of your already thin profit margin being an independent business in downtown Vancouver.
I understand the means of living is harder because rent has to be paid, people have to pay for their families, take care of bills, but at the same time for business owners it's a lot harder because they also have to pay for their other needs and also the business, so it needs to have the 50-50 understanding.
We also spoke with one restaurant owner in Prince George who says the minimum wage increase puts huge amounts of pressure on many businesses' already tight budgets.
We want our employees to thrive. We want them to, have a comfortable life. But, if the burden keeps on getting put on businesses over and over again, as we've seen, not just with minimum wage, with sick days, healthcare tax, increased costs on our food budgets as well. If we see more and more small businesses go under, there's those employees just lose their jobs, and that's no good for anybody.
You're looking at a live shot of the Port of Vancouver. The rain is mostly behind us with nothing but sunshine ahead. Your 5-day forecast is coming up next.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Darius Madavi is here with a look at the forecast. And Darius, I know it was over a week it felt like of just hold your breath. Finally, we can come up for air, but it was a bit windy today too.
Yes, yeah, especially here along the coast. I know many people across Vancouver felt that, and especially in Victoria and other parts along the island, coastal regions along the strait. Very windy conditions. Those are going to continue to calm down as well, along with the weather. So even though we're continuing to see a little bit of cloud in some places and some rain as we get through tomorrow, most of that is going to clear out. Now, you will notice at times continued cloud coverage, especially on the island, less so here on the lower mainland, which will be mostly clear, but at times still a bit cloudy as that low pressure system just continues to make its way up the coast. So a little bit of rain for some parts of the island tomorrow, just very light showers though, very short-lived, nothing like what we saw recently, and then that'll clear out. And again, as we get later into the week, nothing but clear skies pretty much across BC. If we zoom out to the rest of the province, very similar story in terms of the precipitation there. You'll notice some of it still along the coast for the next 24 hours or so, but even that's starting to clear out, and then the cloud clearing out as well. A few thunderstorms are possible tomorrow, especially for central BC and up in the Peace, but other than that, very calm conditions. And actually, even in the Peace, less likely than central BC. Really just that bit of instability there lingering, but then should be clearing up as we get later into the week. And even there, still lots of sunny skies. So don't worry, you're still going to get sunshine in the morning, just the odd chance of a thunderstorm popping up later in the day. If we take a look at winds too, though, also calming down very quickly over the next couple days. A little bit of activity in the strait at times, but I wouldn't expect it to be too gusty unless you're up around Haida Gwaii, the north coast. In terms of temperatures, that's going to be the big story the next few days because there's nothing else going on. Temperature is going to continue to climb as we get into the weekend, reaching 30 in the Okanagan, mid-20s here on the coast. So very temperate temperatures, a little bit warmer than usual for this time of year, which will be a nice change of pace from our cooler than usual temperatures. And again, lots of sunshine going to continue spreading from south to north as that ridge of high pressure builds in, which means don't need to leave too much time for the 5-day forecast, Tanya, because explains itself.
Pretty much it. Wow, we haven't seen that in a long time. Thanks so much, Darius.
Thank you.
And that is your late news for this Tuesday, June 4th. For news anytime, anywhere, download the free CBC News app. You can always find us online as well. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.